Greetings friends, Jennifer Nicole Campbell here. I'm sure you've heard about major scales and minor scales, but have you heard about the Dorian scale? So this episode of Music Musings is going to be a little different than my others. Usually I'll do a musical walkthrough of one piece of music, but today we're actually going to talk about just one particular mode. So, what is a mode first of all? Mode is pretty much like a scale. A scale is a set of whole steps and half steps that are arranged in a certain order. Now, what we know of as the medieval church modes, or the ecclesiastical modes, come from medieval ages, and we're talking about mainly developed by monks and folks like that in monasteries and churches, and they started writing down music notation. This is pretty interesting. So, in a way, the way that they wrote things down were the earliest form of musical recording, right? They didn't have their iPhones, and things like that back then. So this was their way of recording things down so that other people could begin to sing them in churches and in their prayer time, things like that. So they were known as the medieval church modes. There were 8 of them. And what's fascinating is what we know of today as major mode was known as Ionian. And what we know of as minor was then known as Aeolian mode. Okay, there were 6 other modes. We're going to talk about one of them, Dorian. But they developed through the church. Very interesting. And we think that they also came to some extent from the Greeks. They also had different kinds of modes and things. Of course, that was much earlier. We don't have as much that's recorded. So thanks to all those monks and guys in these monasteries, we see these wonderful, beautiful early transcriptions of sound. So take a look at this. These things are called neumes, the little square boxes. And that's what people had to learn. They had to learn how to read those. And often it was in coordination with Latin chants. Okay. So the Dorian mode is very much like the minor mode. There's only one difference. Now, it's a very crucial difference. So if you go to a piano, you start on middle C, go up a step to D, okay, and then you play all the white keys going up an octave, okay? Octave, 8 steps for those of you that don't know. So instead of going up to a B flat, which is what we would have if we were in a minor mode, that's the interval, the 6th, okay? Instead of a minor 6th, we go up a half step, okay? So that's the only difference between minor and Dorian mode. It even sounds kind of medieval, doesn't it? Maybe it makes you feel like you should be sitting on a throne in a castle somewhere. Okay, so it has a very distinctive flavor to it. It's not minor, it's not major, it's distinctively Dorian mode. Let's look at some famous examples. Probably the most famous would be Scarborough Fair. Are you going to Scarborough Fair? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Remember me to one who lives there. She was once a true love of mine. So Simon and Garfunkel, you've heard that version of that probably. But imagine if that was in minor mode instead of Dorian mode. Check it out. Are you going to Scarborough Fair? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Remember me to one who lives there. She was once a true love of mine. Oh, it sounds so tragic, right? Very different. It doesn't have that little edge or vibrancy of somehow positivity or optimism to it. Another famous example is the March of the Lions with Saint-Saëns from the Carnival of the Animals. Again, to demonstrate the power of Dorian mode, let's change it to minor. Aren't quite as majestic, and they're a little bit maybe we're thinking about Scar instead of Mufasa, something like that. So that's another example. And believe it or not, Michael Jackson wrote a piece in Dorian mode. I'm sure you recognize it. She was more like a beauty queen from a movie scene, right? A little Michael Jackson in there. So how is that Dorian? So I had to transpose it from regular old D Dorian to F sharp minor Dorian. A little tricky to play. Must have been difficult for those musicians. So instead of D natural, it's D sharp. Let's think how that would change the style again, or the mood of the piece, if those chords were utilizing minor chords instead of Dorian. Right, with the refrain it would be something like, Billie Jean is not my lover, she's just a girl that claims that I am the one. Right, instead of Billie Jean is not my lover, she's just a girl that claims that I am the one. Right, so there's just something about that little hint of, I hate to just kind of reduce it down to say it's a little more optimistic, but there's something in the word is kind of mode mixture. There's something about that, how it combines this, it's minor, but it's also a little hint of major. And that gives it a special kind of spice, I think, to the flavor of a piece that uses the Dorian mode. Now, a more ancient example of the use of Dorian mode would be from the Gregorian chant, the Dies Irae, or Day of Judgment. And interesting thing about this is a lot of movies actually utilize in the film score references to the Dies Irae at moments of impending doom or something scary is going to happen. And so it's fascinating that something as old as this Dies Irae chant is pulled into the culture today and has a place for it. And it resonates with us. If you have a few minutes, check out a video, I think it's called Every Dies Irae Reference in Popular Movies Ever. So things ranging from Home Alone to Beauty and the Beast, I think, in there. Check it out, it's fascinating. So, what is the Dies Irae? Let's take a listen to this. Dies Irae, Dies Irae, solvet seclum in favilla. But I'm not singing it as well as some of those monks, so let's take a listen to how they sing it. Dies Irae, Dies Irae, solvet seclum in favilla. Teste David cum Sibylla. Quantus semores venturus, quanto iudes est venturus. Cum aspic penis custurus. Now, the other fun thing about Dorian mode is that it's so easy to improvise in, especially for you piano students out there. If you improvise in major, that's fine. It's nice, but everybody knows what minor is, so, or major rather. But to improvise in Dorian mode, it just gives a different flavor to your repertoire. Okay. So, an easy thing to do is just plant a fifth in your left hand. Boom, right? Okay, and you can use any of those notes within Dorian mode. Easiest thing is to go to D and work within that particular form of Dorian mode. If you do it on a different white key or black key, you're going to have to deal with half steps and whole steps because of the white and black keys. Here you can just reduce it down. Do something with an Alberti bass, move it up an octave higher. Okay, so you can have a lot of fun improvising on that particular mode. So there you have it, something new to add to your verbal and musical repertoire, the Dorian mode. And we'll talk about at some later point some of the other medieval church modes. I just think it's fascinating that someone like Michael Jackson would be using some of these ancient modes from the medieval times, and he uses it to his advantage to give a distinctive touch to some of his most famous pieces of music. So you can do the same for your pieces of music, and maybe they'll go viral. Who knows? If you like this video, be sure to share, subscribe, like, click the notification bell. We'll see you next time.